I would like to invite our chair, Mr. S.R. Pandey, member Gujarat Electricity Regulatory Commission. He is well versed in power sector, having more than 37 years of rich and varied work experience in all the phases of the power sector. Our moderator, Mr. Ravi Sitapati, Chairman Bioservice and WG Chair, India Smart Grid Forum. He also served as the ambassador for the Americans for the Global Smart Energy Federation, USA, and has an advisor to the India Smart Grid Forum with over 35 plus years of experience in the energy and power sector area in Canada. He mentors several utility and companies in their technology development. And now I would like to call upon our speakers. Mr. Petrit, he is a managing director at Clarence, a public affair and communication consultancy based in Brussels that specializes in advocacy, political and regulatory risk assessment, public funding, and strategic communication. He has been involved in the climate and energy field since 2003 and is the Secretary General of two Brussels-based associations in the energy sector, the European Association for Storage of Energy and the European Suppliers of Waste to Energy Technologies. Welcome, sir. Mr. Munish Sharma, he possesses more than 2 decades of rich hands-on experience with multinational companies and Indian in various roles across business operation, consumer services, analytics, consulting, strategy, and policy advocacy. In his current assignment at Power Distribution Utility Practice at BSES, Reliance Infrastructure Limited and Delhi government, he leads the ESG and sustainability function. Welcome, sir. Mr. B.B. Mehta, he is overall in charge of efficient and secure power system operation and control in the state of Orissa as chief load dispatcher and director. He is actively involved in renewable energy, integration system stability, electricity market, economic, open access, energy efficiency, and smart grid for power system operation, and has also played key role in implementation of supervisory control and data acquisition, wide area monitoring system, renewable energy forecasting solution. He is Vice President at L&T Power Transmission and Distribution. At L&T PTND, he is Business Unit Head for Digital Energy Solution, a global BU with presence in United States. In that capacity, Dr. Kumar is also USA Country Head for L&T PTND. Dr. Kumar engagement during last decade has been incubating and growing new business in the domain of electric power generation, transmission, and distribution. Welcome, sir. Ms. Shivani Sharma. She is a principal technical consultant with over 16 years of rich industrial experience in the field of energy, R&D, power system, analysis, EPC, and detailed design engineering across geographies. She has a PhD in electrical power system and data mining and a master's in power system. She has received several awards, including the Engineering Leader of the Year in 2022, Engineering Excellence Award in 2022. Welcome, ma'am. Chief Technical Service and PSSC in Tata Power Mumbai, has an experience of managing real-time operation of distribution and transmission system for past 10 years, has been instrumental in development of system and solution in TPC for efficient power management. Welcome, sir. Mr. KVS Baba, he is the founder, chairman, and managing director of Power System Operation Corporation Limited, India's national power system operator and responsible for the reliable and economic operation of the All India electricity grid, which is also connected to the neighboring countries. During his work life of 37 years, he was associated with power system planning, design, and operation. During this period, the Indian grid connected to neighboring countries, that is Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal through HVDC and HVAC transmission system. Welcome, sir.
Good morning to everybody. Today's session is on power system flexibility, strategy, and solutions. Now we see that since last so many years, the change is happened in power systems. Previously, it is one-sided flow of power from generator side to consumer side with consideration of transmission network and distribution networks. Now, at distribution network also, at consumer place, the generation took place by way of rooftop solar systems, as well as at consumer place at agriculture sector in particular pump set levels, also at feeder levels. So the flow of power, which is physically previously flow from generator to consumer side, one side, now number of generators or flexible generation has been introduced by way of the grids integration places. And particularly renewable penetration is also increased lot of, and that renewable energy is available in different forms at different places. So there are n number of players who are generating and supply the electricity from different places, and it will flow from consumer sides to the distribution network, and to that, to some time, it will be transmission network. So flow of information or which is take place in physical form or in data forms in both way now happens. Previously, it is possible to manage by the system operator, that is grid operators, to see that what is generation, what is the load, and how to manage it. But nowadays, the critical challenge is that the generation which took place at different places and also inject into the grid from the distribution network at consumer place or at feeder level, and it affect the grid operations, particularly in distribution network, and it is also affect later on transmission network. I give an example. In one area of the distribution licensee, there are more than 1 megawatt rooftop solar system has introduced, and it is already operating. But after few times, in particular 1 month, it has been happened that at particular 11 hour or 12 hours, the feeder is trips and power supply is interrupted. So the licensee is in search of that, what is the problems? So on analysis, it is found that there is imbalancing happen in the systems due to the rooftop projects which are kept at consumer place are in such a way it create the imbalance in the systems, and voltage level in particular one feeder has been increased, and it lead to the tripping of the feeders. So challenge has been happen now with consideration of different aspect, with consideration of penetration of renewable energy. Now challenge is also come in the form of green hydrogens, EV charging stations, and also in different form of the storage also. So with consideration that part, the role of grid operator, which was previously sitting in the SLDC or NLDC or RLDC, has been changed. Now major role also to come on the distribution system operators, just like grid operators of the transmission networks. And in that fashion, it is necessary to see that what are the flexibility to be provided with integration of renewable energies increases. It is anticipated that 2030, about 830 gigawatt of renewable energy comes. In 2040, it is anticipated 1,500 plus gigawatt energy from the renewable energy is integrated with the grids. Now, renewable energy, we see that it is erratic in nature, and flexibility is required to balancing when the power supply is not available from that. And that is possible by way of different tools, just like power storage systems, gas turbines, base generation, hydro generations, and other things. Similarly, the penetration of rooftops and other things also provide different challenges in different rural area as well as the urban area. So in that situation, the role of flexible generation, flexible management of the system with real-time basis, because at present we are operating in 50-minute time blocks basis, controlling the data and other things. Now it required to go for 5 minutes or 1 minute also, because the data is huge, and analysis of that data as well as on time-bound manner, how to control it, it is also important. With that, my remark, I see that all speakers speaks about the particularly this, what are the challenges in this scenario, how to manage it, and what is the role of DSO, distribution system operators, because if they are neglected or they have no role up till now. Now they are also having huge challenge, and they are having key role also in the operation of the system, part of the system operation. Now system operation is operating in both sides, on distribution load sides also as well as on generation sides. With this remark, I put up to all speakers that they give their own comments on their subjects. Second thing is time limit is limited. So with consideration of that part, 8 to 9 minutes, try to stick on their submissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your opening remarks. As the Chair mentioned, since we have limited time and we're sort of many speakers today, it'll be good to see an opening comment from you all as to what you think are the top 3 areas of interest for you. Whether it is for or against, it's fine. And then we will have some kind of a moderated debate based on what I hear from everybody. And maybe we will have a cross discussion. And then some time for Q&A as well. This area is, in my view, is very critical. In fact, sometimes I feel the freight train is already moving and we have not even addressed the solution here. And so with that, I'm going to go from left to right to left. The gentleman who gets the first crack is a person who I've heard him when he was the president and chair of POSOCO. And he bore it all, in fact, in his term. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Baba.
Thank you. I think Chair has brought out very clearly what is the next required. See, few years ago, our demand was more or less known to the most of the load serving entities or discoms. So whatever modulation we need to do is from the generation side only. So only generation optimization or, to be frank, not even optimization, first it used to be maximization. Whatever is available, that is to be the demand. So that is only one area where generation. But now we have so much of generation available. So the consumer also has come into play. His whims and fancies or his requirements have been changing as per his conveniences now. Whenever you want a switcher. So the demand has been changing rapidly and it is becoming more peaky. So now the equation has changed. Now the generation also has to be moduled as per the demand. Now demand need to be forecasted. Earlier it was whatever is available is the demand. Now it is a demand need to be forecasted, so the generation has to be matched. So the situation has changed. Once availability is more and options are more. Earlier only thermal, very few. Our resource constrained generation like hydro are limited. But now we have so many varieties of generation. So economics also coming into picture. Earlier economics also was not in the forefront. Now economics also have come. So the system operator's role becomes humongous, basically. So there's a variation in the generation, there is a variation in the demand also. Another important aspect is, many a times the transmission was taken granted, but now the transmission also is an important area. So the flexibility, the moment the flexibility comes is that we need to prepare ourselves for all the 3 components: generation, transmission, and distribution. Of course, economics plays the major role in optimizing all these 3. So as earlier, it was only one body in any distribution company used to do the calculations now, but every level optimization is required. So market has come. So many, earlier there were no market developed, only one day ahead procurement. Now there are so many products on the market also. So the flexibility in market also has been provided in India now. So what is the strategy is that now optimization from at all levels. So the distribution company, as the chair has rightly pointed out, now this is the era we have to seriously think of distribution system operator. And we are, in fact, our technology and all things have come, we are still thinking about distribution system operator. So, and first and foremost, I fully agree with chair's view that distribution system operator should be, we are already delayed, I should say. So, and of course, many a times as a, a system operator, we feel that demand forecasting has not been in the forefront from most of the load serving entities or discoms. If you ask them, they do not have, many a times, there is no database from where they can really extrapolate or find out what is next. And another important factor is India is that demand depends upon the weather. So the weather dependency, and that also is another important area which we need to work on. The scope is a lot. Of course, IMD has come out with so many products and trying to give you 2 hours in advance or a day in advance, which are more or less accurate to about 80 to 90%. So availability of weather data is also there. So the weather dependency, the demand characteristics are also changing. Plus, humidity and temperature are really controlling the demand. And average consumer comfort levels have changed. So therefore, demand forecasting is becoming a very important. So because the time is limited, so my takeaways are, this thing is very important, is that demand forecasting is a prime where everyone has to focus. Of course, Chair has already told renewables, so I'm not touching upon what all actions to be taken on the renewables. So I club them in the generation side. Logistics are, therefore, demand forecasting, distribution system operator, and optimization from the down and the most end of the chain, value chain. These are the 3 very important to immediately, urgently to address. Of course, system security is ultimate and utmost, paramount important. So whatever actions we do, economics or everything, the system security cannot be undermined. While keeping the system security, all the other actions have to take place. So that's the, briefly I would like to point.
Very pleasant afternoon to all. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure being among all stalwarts and such relevant points put up by the chair as well as Baba sir. And I would just like to take the same points ahead, and thank you for mentioning the 3 points limit, because I think being the relevant stakeholders, we may have too many things to say. So typically if we see in India, the utilities are say 50 to 60 years old, and as far as the large renewables, as far as the transmission planning is considered, we were quite serious. Like before 15 years you would like to plan, what's the green corridor you would like to have, and so on. Distribution utilities is, I would like to compare it to a mine where you do not know that what may come out. Once the quantum of these kind of renewables, the different kind of distributed energy resources that we are talking about. So coming to the 3 points, my submission would be, the first one is situational awareness. So we have to be really aware with the kind of demography that India has, with the kind of network, the renewable availability, and what's the intermittency. That's the most important. Second is the operational confidence. So one has to be really aware that, as the previous speaker had said, the load forecast was more or less known annually for the previous times. Now you would also see many other features like climate change, and when we say climate change, it's not the environment alone. You would see substation fires in certain area. You would see, for example, in USA, the gas pipeline temperatures dropped. And when we have these kind of climate changes, how we are balancing the energy mix becomes really very important. And specifically, the flexibility is going to form the key of how well we are able to integrate these different kind of energies into our grid. And when we say flexibility, in the older times, we are all aware of those large inertia boiler, turbine generators, and you would sit and see that, okay, a 4% droop is good enough. That's the kind of load sharing increase, decrease you could cater to. Coming to today's time, where you have energy mix, you may have EV, you may have green hydrogen, you may have renewable, microgrids, and so on. So what is that kind of ramp up, ramp down times for that particular renewable plant controller, or for example, the battery energy storage systems becomes really very critical. And my key takeaway would be that whenever we are trying to form an energy mix, whenever we are trying to integrate it into the grid, it has to be a very well thought, phased implementation where we would like to see that what's the true representation of the models. So maybe say in the previous times, we did certain steady state analysis, if that integration is possible or not. Now we have moved to a point where the developers have to ascertain that it's a true representation. So once that battery energy storage system, the flexibility that we are looking for, once it gets connected to the actual network, how does it behave? Whether we get the resilience factor. So as a customer, they may not be really, much impressed that I would say, yes, there's an EV, there's a green hydrogen. They would really like to look into the service levels, the cost, the quality, there has to be no interruptions and so on. So whenever there are applications like BESS, flexible resources, there are two things very important. One is the size, and second is the application for which you would like to have that flexibility into your system. So ultimately, it has to also provide your reliability. It also has to see what's your exact, is it just a backup? Is it something during the peak time that you are trying to meet, and so on. So there's a number of technical, a number of economic, commercial, and regulatory factors that go behind it. And I'm sure we have more interesting deliberations as we go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
All right. The perspective, and especially the 3 points that Ravi is asking us to put it to you in a much more slick manner for this such a broad topic is a daunting task.
I'm purposely putting it.
I know. And he has always put me on the examination for the last 20 plus years I have known him, and it has always been tough. So here you go again. What I'll start with, when we talk about the flexibility and power system operation, the question is why we are talking about, and naturally some of the debates and the suggestions and comments have been made, is because of the advent of what we call it distributed energy resources, which actually symbolizes solar, storage, wind, the different kinds of renewable assets, and electric vehicle, and demand response. So if you look at the US Department of Energy definition of DER, that's what it constitutes of. The question is how to integrate that into grid operation, and in order to do that, how flexible the grid operation should be. And that's the context of the flexibility in grid operation and at large is coming from my perspective. Having said that, I would like to kind of go down the ladder, starting from transmission to distribution to overall business model. Needless to say that the country here, as well as many parts of the world, we have spent a lot of stamina and rigor how we should be doing the renewable integration into transmission flexibly. The story started in India with the definition of REMCs, the Renewable Energy Management Center, how you are going to be bringing all those and integrating into the grid operation. My comment and one point message back to the answer that we are supposed to give, I would say that at the transmission level, we still don't have a notion of flexibility as a service. What I mean by that is, when you come to a question of having a construct and then leading to a system and platform which will help us to really encourage the right practice and more importantly a mechanism that can get to the power load balance, which is what ultimately we have to do to keep up the reliability. We really need to introduce that. Example that I can think about in that case would be that if you really look at example a PJM market in the United States, they did introduce for the reliability purpose that we need to have a price responsive demand. Now what that basically is that they are trying to procure ancillary services from one of these DER assets, could be demand response, and hence making the grid operation flexible. One of the biggest challenge that at large, and especially in the United States you have, and it'll come down to everywhere else as well, that at the end of the day, it's the generation which is getting paid, and you are having all kinds of distributed generation, how to monetize them. And it's directly correlated with how the reliability is getting managed by procuring still the traditional sources, not integrating the distributed energy resources. And that's what my point at the transmission level is. So it requires that kind of a construct, and it needs a platform for providing the grid as a service, integrating to the existing platform. Coming down to the distribution, of course, our esteemed chair already mentioned that what should be the role of distribution system operator. That's right there. What I have to say is that look at what we are doing in India. We are going through big time RDSS project, and you look at focus is the fundamental SCADA and DMS. But when you look at this question, that what is the distribution system operator role and how we are incorporating that into RDSS scheme, it's a question mark. What I would like to suggest is, and our esteemed speakers, all panelists already spoke about it, the first one especially, that forecasting is a big problem. And when you talk about forecasting, it's a different levels of forecasting, different kinds of forecasting, and more importantly, as you was commenting on here, there are forecasting available 2 hours ahead. The point is we need to be entering into the era of dynamic forecasting. So that's the key element that I would like to mention as part of the distribution system operator role as the first building block. That's where it starts, that's not where it ends. And building upon that infrastructure that they need to have, they really need to look at, let me just put it very simply, if you go to the distribution control room, you will get the control room desk. The question is there any DER desk? Is there any distributed energy resource desk? It's not. I'll just sum up by saying on that piece, there should be a distributed energy resource desk in the distribution control room. There is a platform needed there. It can integrate with the ADMS, it can come and do the collaboration with the SCADA and other systems, and it should have the forecasting as a foundational pillar. So that would be the ask and suggestion that I would like to make at the distribution. The last piece that I would like to talk about is the business model. I would say we have taken a great stride. We are doing a lot of things in India already, but then we need to take it forward. An example being, I'll like to say, the initiative of Samast. And I'm sure that among the panelists, we have the gurus on Samast, so I'm not going to mention about that, and he will elaborate on it. But as a solution provider, what I would like to mention is, Samast is a journey. We should not be boxing the requirement as just those point functionality. Rather, we need to have a vision that we got to have a platform on which Samast needs to be delivered, so that it's a journey for meeting the needs for today, but the platform requirement should be such that it should evolve for the future scaling as we will be going through the journey of Samast. So that's the business model part of it. So those are my 3 submissions.
Thank you. Now I believe you will have you can see it's already getting complicated. The water is boiling already, so good.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Chair, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have very short slides, if you could show them. I'm Patrick Clarence. I'm Secretary General of EASE, the European Association for Storage of Energy. Our members are from component suppliers like lithium salt to equipment suppliers, DSOs, TSOs, we have utilities, we have everyone. Can I get the next slide, please? I will try to stick my 5 minutes and then I'm through it. Here you see the members. It's really, you see all the big names are there. It's the whole chain, which sometimes makes it difficult to understand questions like who should own storage. Is it a regulated entity or only market players? It's a very interesting question. Or should it be otherwise? But it gives a good view of the sector. That's what we see in Europe. We want to move from the existing targets to higher renewable targets, to 45% of renewable energy in the final energy consumed. This is due to the fact that we have in Europe the crush of energy due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which means that we need to triple today's renewable capacity in 8 years or 7 years. That's what we need to do, to triple this. It's a huge challenge for us to do. And we want to be net zero by 2050. But for the moment, we see already that there is a lot of curtailment going on. And we need to reduce this curtailment. We don't want to triple the curtailment. This is known for all of you. But I want to show is that this change is getting stress in the system. We heard it before, a lot of stress in the system. And here I'm representing energy storage. It's not the only solution because you can have also grid extension, demand-side management, and so on. But I will focus now on energy storage. Energy storage would provide a lot of security with two tools. Flexibility of the system, real-time flexibility, very fast millisecond reactions, and also energy shifting from the moment with a lot of sun and a lot of wind to moments where there's less sun or less wind. So it makes two things, and it's important to realize that there are two functions, shifting of energy and flexibility. And if you look what is happening, we need all technologies for energy storage. It is, in Europe, 50% of the energy is consumed to heat and cool buildings. It is way cheaper to store energy in ice form or in heat form than to store it in batteries or in electrical form. So we can use a lot of integrating different systems and make it cheaper for the consumer. We see that we need, therefore, all technologies. And we have some experience in Europe. Where do we use storage for the moment? We use it to enhance the transmission grid and the distribution grid. This N-1 criteria, where you always need to have a reserve line. This is vanishing for the moment. We have the first trials in Europe where we have, instead of 3 lines, only using 2. We use all the 3 lines for transmission, and we put a big storage at the end, which gives us 10 hours of electricity, which the line would normally give. So if there's a breakdown, the transmission system operator has 10 hours to intervene, which is a lot of time. You can make it double as big, so they have 20 hours to intervene and to solve the issue. And with this, you don't need to build new lines now, and you can use the lines more efficiently. Out of 2 lines, you make 3 lines. That's huge. We see that there is, in Europe, the feeling that net metering, which is happening here in India for PV, for example, is unfair. Because the person who has no PV on his roof, they pay for the grid extension because the grid is actually used as a storage device. I put with my PV into the grid when I want, and I take it out of the grid when I want. This gives more stress on the system, blackouts, we heard them, overcharges, but the grid needs to be upgraded. This costs money, and this cost is given to everyone. Even if I don't have PV on my roof, I pay for this cost in my consumption. We feel it's unfair. So we feel that net metering is helping the ones who are rich enough to put photovoltaics on the roof to the cost of the whole system, also the ones who don't have this possibility. So the question is, should the person who brings this PV in the system, which makes it unbalanced, be the one who should also take the responsibility to maybe store it and therefore make it available at the right moment and use as much as possible without a grid. It's also cheaper to use it itself. We see today already that PV and storage is cheaper than having diesel generators. Already today. So there's no need to get for backup generators. And finally, the question is, should flexibility be a monopoly of the transmission system and the balancing obligation be a monopoly of the transmission system, or should we check if on the distribution system there is the room for flexibility markets flexibility provisions in order to have problems which are now generated on a local level with PV. We heard that in one feeder. Also solved at this local level with some tools and market tools. These are the main points. I want just to go to the next point. In order to allow for this, we need to have storage, and that's what I said before. We have different kinds of storage. One who will go into the heating and cooling and maybe transport, which is very good for flexibility, real-time flexibility, and one which is shifting energy to a later moment of use, where electricity comes in, electricity comes out. We need to think of both, and therefore all technologies. That's the growth in Europe and foreseen, but what I want to show you, in Europe we say, today we have 1 gigawatt installed of storage a year, roughly. 60 exist, where we have 50 of hydropower, 10 only on batteries. And we would like to have this going to 200 gigawatt installed in Europe by 2030. India, the Indian Energy Storage Association, says 180 gigawatts should be installed in India by 2030. 180, so it's not a big difference. And 600 gigawatt in 2050. But this is not done if we don't have different tools to get this on the ground. And we're not going into details now for the time. I mentioned some of them. And here's some market design recommendations. I will not go into these. But we need to look at the market design. We need to look at the change in revenue streams in order to roll out and have these tools at hand which we need for a new system. And if you want to know more about Europe, we have a storage conference in October this year, so you're more than welcome to come to this conference if you want. I hope I was fast enough.
I'll start. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very important topic which is quite global, and we have heard a lot of perspectives, big numbers, big expectations to arrive at the things. I'll be representing one of the distribution companies in Delhi. We are largest company in Delhi who distributes power. About 45% of the load of Delhi is served by BSES Rajdhani Power Limited. And this aspect of flexibility of the system is quite crucial to us. But I'll be giving a very infographic kind of a twist to this entire discussion. That why it is important, because we are serving consumers, and ultimately all the systems, everything which we develop at the end, it's for the end customer. And for any system to work in a flexible manner or a resilient manner, or many other terms are there which are coming up, we have to actually see how consumer has also evolved. We have been listening to a term called prosumer nowadays, that consumer is also producing power now. So with these changing dynamics of the consumer in terms of its status change, and then the way in which the consumer behaves while drawing the power and the electricity, that becomes more crucial. So directly on to the slides here. All of us know the neck issue, that the renewables which we have been trying to infuse into the system, Delhi right now is at about 25% in terms of its renewable as of now. We wanted to make it to 50% in next 5 years horizon. So definitely this issue would be coming, and we are facing this issue of the actual imposition of the availability of the renewables to our load curve. Next please. I wanted to skip a couple of slides and wanted to come to a precise point. Next please. Next please. We have used all the strategies which are available as of now, and these are high-level 4-5 points on which, as a DISCOM company, we are focusing. Definitely, the demand-side management is one of the largest points. Demand-side management and the ADR, automatic demand response to the grid resource. That how we do it quickly is the essence out here. And we have installed almost all the systems in place from our system operator. That we have been able to maintain the demand of the consumer. We have been able to forecast it through the latest technologies available, so that the time required for arriving at a solution to the surge of the demand can be arrived at. Next please. These are certain initiatives we have been doing with the government and on standalone basis. Next please. There's a lot of consumer awareness which has gone into place, because at the end of the day, customer is a very strong potential stakeholder. Whatever we do as a system operator or a generator, transmission meter distributor, or a policy advocator in the government, but consumer has to get aligned ultimately to make our goals quite clear. And we have been doing it, and I would say that we have got the resilience of about 3% of our total demand under the DSM, which is quite aggressive, and we have been able to maintain and reach this level of DSM initiative penetration into Delhi. One big number which I would like to say, that Delhi constitutes about 4% of the load of India. And Delhi is growing organically at the pace of 7 to 8% per annum. And if I am 50% of Delhi, in the same parity, demand for my distribution company is also going up. So I have to be in line in advance to arrive at a situation which is there 5 years down the line, to arrive at the expected level of demand, and then I'll be able to sustain that. Next, please. Almost all the initiatives which a customer gets into its daily life from a distribution utility perspective have been experimented at BSES Rajdhani. And these are some numbers. The numbers are ever growing, sir. We have recently partnered with Delhi government that to provide us additional sites, because whenever we see for charging stations, it calls for a lot of, as any initiative, the acquisition of the site and the place takes some time. So we have identified many abandoned sites or corners, or even abandoned dustbins by MCDs, where we have been putting battery charging stations and the swapping stations for the customers. Why we are using that location is, they may not be very strategic on the road, but they should be, the point is that they should be near to the customer. That is the way in which we will be penetrating more to the next, please. These are energy storage systems. 6 have already been placed and 5 are in the pipeline for BSES Rajdhani. These are the statistics. I'll be skipping that. Next, please. These are the improvements in the energy time shifting. We can see the green is our curve, and all the peaks and the lows have been shaved off. Next, please. BS system and our real-time market, the way in which we procure power. We have tried to make a system that, and it's all there available, the wisdom is all available in the globe now, that we should be charging all our battery fitments at the time when the prices of real-time market are lower, so that there is no burden on the customer ultimately, because it's a regulated business in India, and ultimately customer has to pay for it. Next, please. Peak shaving, value filling, everything happening out place. These are the real-time snapshots of one of the locations. Janakpuri is the location right now depicted out here. Next, please. We have created one urban micro smart grid. This is next to our regulator's office, Delhi Electricity Regulatory Commission, Shivalik, where we have been able to actually achieve all the aims required from this kind of a setup. Next, please. This is the output of that. Next, please. Recently, we have this UI Assist, US and India Assist TERI BESS programs. We have taken about 4 sites out here. 5 more are in the pipeline. So the idea is that all the ingredients which are there, all the supports through the grant and the overall mechanisms are there in place to reach up to. Next, please. This one point, I'll just take, sir, 1.5 minutes here. Behavior energy efficiency is ultimately customer, how we tackle the customer, because at the end of the day, customer has 3 expectations from a distribution utility: that there should be an uninterrupted power supply, the power supply should also be cheaper most available to them, and the value-added services should be so crisp and clear that they should not be a burden on the consumer while they are transacting with the discoms. So these are the broad behaviors which as a utility we have to take care of. Next, please. We ran this program, next please, in 10 of the division offices of BSES Rajdhani Power Limited, covering about 2 lakh customers. These are the statistics for the same. Quickly, next please. And the sampling of these 286,000 customers, they were made into two groups. The above is the treatment group, where we actually educated them, and then the control group, which were not educated. And ultimately, we see the last bar chart that the control group, the average energy use was quite high. The treatment, where we actually went in engaging with them on a very nearby realistic level, the overall engagement has actually benefited them in terms of reduction of their demand and ultimately the load on the grid. Next, please. We have been giving them home energy reports. This is in association with Oracle Corporation. Next, please. These are real-time bills of BSES Rajdhani to all the customers who have opted for this scheme. Next, please. One thing which we have always thought that sustainability is the key thing, and for any initiative to be sustainable, we need to work on the grassroots. We have started working with the children through Delhi government schools. We have got about 150 schools in Delhi for this EWER program. EWER stands for Energy Wise, Energy Rise, where all sorts of distribution, power, electricity, safety, and the consumption pattern behavior things have been told to the customers, and there's a huge difference, sir. I can say that we have improved our reliability in those areas. We have been able to make the supply codes as given to us by the DRC under certain areas, because there had been network constraints in certain areas where even if we were supplying power, there were thefts. So with this education, we have been able to reduce the theft also, as well as the additional load on the system, and ultimately the demand response. Next, please. Quick takeaways that everything has to be there. It's just not the responsibility of generation, transmission, or distribution. Flexibility aspects and provisions are available throughout the value chain. But yes, we have to see the prosumer outlook of the customer now, and going forward, if this prosumer also becomes a trade partner in the electricity, with all the latest blockchain coming in, where we can also sell our additional power and buy it in advance and do the future banking and future and options coming into the electricity markets. So we have to see the holistic picture, and then we have to make the practical moves. Thank you. I'll take a leave right now. So
good afternoon. Thank you, India Smart Grid Forum. Thank you, Chairman Sir, extending an opportunity to share the views on the flexibility requirement. Let us take a small look. What was the scenario before 10, 12 years, 15 years? Only variation was on the load side. We were able to control the generation. Me and Baba Sahib operated the grid since many years. There was no variation on the generation side. There was only variation on the demand side. So things were not much difficult. Only there was a starvation of generation. We were only doing load restriction, etc. It is a different thing. But now the day has changed. There is a variation in the demand, as well as there is a variation in the availability of power or the generation, because the majority component of the generation is through renewable source, and which is not on our hand, which is not controllable by the plant operator, which only at the base of the natural phenomena or the sun solar timing or the Varun Dev wind. So now when the generation is complementary with the requirement of power, it creates a problem. When it is supplementary to the requirement of power, I think it is out the work of the grid operator or a system operator. So the problem is arising. Let us take a practical example. Eastern India, 7 a.m. loads start falling down. Had it been the case of 2030 target by Ministry of Power or MNRE, about 500 GW renewable, some GW will be in the eastern part of the country. Today, by 7 a.m., all grid operators in the Eastern India backing down their generation. And what will happen? A 200 GW of power installed in the Eastern India will start picking up on its own, because it is a natural resource. I don't have demand to use that power, so I need to think something. Either I should have trade relation with the other part of the country, or I should harness it properly in the storage form. So storage requirement arise out of this, and till the storage comes, I need to have a flexibility of my thermal power plant or the conventional power plant. Today, most of the power plant, regulation is there for 55%, But let me be honest, the 210 megawatt BHL machine supplied between 1980 to 1990, more than 250 machines have been available in the country. If you operate at 55%, you have to fire more fuel. It will operate on liquid fuel. You need a fuel support. You need a oil support. So what is the end cost? That also has to be think about it. So the point is that this is an energy transition phase. And any transition will have these things. If we think more, today is 2023. Same room, 21-23, this problem would have been gone away. The solar at the Vladivostok will be lighting up the lamp at the Paris also. And only transmission network will be managing, no thermal, no conventional plant will be there. But we have to resolve, we have to think something till that 100 years span. So coming to our talk once again, the one problem is the natural phenomena and availability of generation, so we need to address it with respect to flexibility and the storage. Now things doesn't stop here. Our one more mission in our mind, and it is a good thing, that we would like to have a less emission in the environment. So we are switching over to the EV. Now let us take a simple example. Everybody will have two-wheeler or four-wheeler. When you go back to the home at evening, 75% of our people are returning to the home by 5 p.m., 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. We simply plug it and switch it on. What will happen to the poor discom? It is the highest tariff at which they are supplying power to the consumer. Imagine a 1 million four-wheeler in the city like Delhi, getting charged at 7 p.m. What will be the tariff of the Delhi distribution companies, from where they will get the power? So there also, my requirement of power is at some odd hours where the natural resources are not there. I need a storage. I need a flexibility. Knowing all these things, we are planning 500 GW for 2030. But what is our planning for storage? Probably not in GW. What is our planning for flexibility or addition to the flexibility to my conventional power plant across the country, which is having installed capacity more than 100 GW? Probably answer is not. So it is high time that we knowingly the technical limitation and the concept which we are going to adopt, we take some administrative decision, we take some technical decision, and we try to implement. And we have a path of implementation in such a way that we pass through this transition stage in a homogeneous manner without much difficulty in the grid management, without anticipating any blackout like that. What are certain administrative decisions? Do any distribution company, which is not, I'm not referring to Delhi or Mumbai discom. The discom, real discom are, which is in large terrain, like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Odisha. Do they have a model or a scientific based demand forecast solution? Probably the answer is no. We have a last Indian Statistical Institute, the highest in the world level, sir. We have IITs with us. We have the solution. We know the problem. We have the money in a PhD fund. But we are not tying up these three requirements together and giving the demand forecast solution, reliable demand forecast solution to the poor discom. Bhaiya, tera demand abhi 10 baje ke baad ye aayega. This is a limitation. This we need to address. Now, demand forecast solution doesn't come only through the statistic. I need to know what is the weather parameter. Baba Sahib has rightly pointed out. Weather has a direct impact on the requirement of power. And it drastically changes. And it has to be reported well in advance. Because I cannot revise my requirement of power before 7 or 8 time block. So I need to have a signal for updates on the weather well before that. So I have time to take corrective action. So we need to have IMD is excellent. I belong to Odisha. We are a cyclone prone state. We get a very accurate, correct weather forecast and cyclone movement also from the IMD. But the concern with respect to power sector is not a cyclone or the flood, whether men and animals are to be relocated to the safe place. Our requirement is much lesser than that. If you take the case of wind, at 10 meters per second and beyond, windmill gets locked. So the resolution at which the IMD works, the sensitivity which for IMD has a facility, probably they need to open one subgroup, which is very much important for the power sector requirement, which is requirement for the solar or the wind forecasting, weather related data, and the demand affecting weather forecasting. this is to be adopted. This will make my demand forecast solution much reliable, much accurate to the near to my requirement. And if such alerts are received well in advance, I will able to tune up the requirement of power from my resources which I have tied up so far. So these are 2-3 things we need to adopt. And this is an administrative tip, but technically how I will manage? That we have just initially in my talk we have seen that when there is an additional power which is from the natural resources, I need to dump it somewhere, I need to store it. Sir, more than 4,000 megawatt of pump mode hydro station, I repeat my sentence, more than 4,000 megawatt are available, installed and can be operated in our country but are not put to use due to only technical reasons. We know that we are planning 500 GW by 2030. How much pump storage planning we have done for to meet the 500 GW? Any 50 GW pump mode storage planning is there? We need to take a corrective step. IIT Roorkee Hydrology Department, other countries are availing facility from them, whether the conventional hydro project can be converted to pump mode or not. We have never asked them to visit our hydro project. So it's a time that we reopen our things and we avail the technology, knowledge, academic support in our country and try to resolve certain very important things for which we are gathered here. Thank you very much.
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon to all. Well, with all this discussion going on, I don't think there is anything which needs to be added. But let me tell you very fundamental part, and which I'll start from what Baba sir has said. See, our grid code starts with secured and economical operation of grid system, right? Now, where does flexibility fit into it? Actually, flexibility is basically required to keep these two things going together. Now, when I say economical operation, see, when most of the things operate on, say, even at market level or whatever is the consumer requirement, so all the tie-ups, all the generation which is dispatched, is basically on the economy front of it. Now, just take the case of the grid operator who is there, right? How much of freedom does he have to control if anything goes wrong? We talk about the duck curve, right? So if you look into, duck has got 3 sections, majorly. One is its belly, another is its neck, and one is its beak, right? The belly is our big concern of curtailment, right? Where I think all the grid operator and overall nation is struggling with how do we do with this. The neck, ramp rates, right? How do we have a fast ramp rate system to take it? And beak, because what is going to happen during my off-green period, right? How do I have generation, thermal generation running and picking up during that time and sustaining that and then come back again, taking from tail up. So these are huge challenges, but one thing, I think we all know what is the solution, right? It's only what solution to be applied, and very importantly, who owns that solution? The biggest argument comes when it, say, I'm taking a case of, say, storage. Now, the argument comes, where the storage has to be placed, who is going to work on it, whether it is on the distribution side or is it on the transmission side. Again, the trade-off is when we talk about reliability and resilience, right? Now, reliability and resilience, both are required, but resilience certain times requires some investment which would be used sometimes during crisis. Now, you go to a regulator and most of them who is looking from the consumer perspective will say that, well, if islanding is going to happen once in a lifetime, do you need to invest on it? Or do you need to have my consumers pay for it? So this is a big question mark, and how we optimize these things between the transmission part of it, how do we have these solutions on the transmission part of it, which is on the beck and call of the grid operator. Now, I'll give you a very good example which has just recently happened. I think one of the, I per se, this is my personal opinion, that the new DSM regulation has taken the step towards isolating or at least having a mechanism of this trade-off between economy and security, with grid operator given the freedom to manage the system as it is required. But we saw the result, right? Where again the basic is that people use that as a market to work on their economy. So we need to mature on that. We need to optimize our usages so that in sense that whatever solutions we are putting, we should have sufficient number of solutions as well as a policy by which there should be high level of control to the grid operator wherever system security is at place. But at the same time, the cost of this should be, maybe in certain cases it could be socialized, maybe in certain cases it could be where the DISCOM is taking the benefit of it can go. And role of the DSO becomes very, very important. And just for the knowledge, like in Delhi or for that matter Mumbai, we do have operations something similar to DSO, though we cannot, we have not called it like that, but all the functions which has been told, like the power management, the network management, the DER management, right, all is done at the control room. So what my BSCS colleague showed, so the same thing applies across Delhi, where you got fair amount of activity which has been done to bring in the consumers, like demand response, where you use other new technologies which are coming in, say blockchains, so to have more real-time interaction with consumers, so that they also become a participant in the whole activity of power management. Again, my 2 words onto it, that one, of course, the demand management, demand side flexibility requires a lot of forecasting and understanding or keeping the resource by the distribution side. But the biggest part, that is the network stability and ensuring that the system works well, we require policies and systems in place, and say more so, I will be more categoric, like more dynamic ancillary services, ancillary things in place. And why policies? It should be such that there should be independent ancillary operators in the system who find it business-wise viable to put such things in for the use of the grid system operator. So these are my 2 key words. Rest, I think the solutions are known. I'll just take very simple case of Odisha, that we know that cyclone is predicted. The main thing is that how do we prepare for it? Sometimes you know that it is definitely going to give a loss. The only thing is that how do you mitigate it and how do you come up fast? And the whole exercise of flexibility is also from that person. That's my 2 words about it. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank kind invitation from Indian Smart Association, and main thanks, special thanks to Mr. Raji. I continue coming to India to be well educated, and allow me for this strange introduction to this very excellent topics that in the world, just I get now from the internet, we have more than 20,000 trillion ants. And in general, population is around just only 8 billion. And if we make a compromise between ants, kingdom around the world, and for a human being, we are very strange people. You know what? Because everything is a problem in our life. When it comes to electricity, and when it comes to sustainability, when it's come to many global health issues, because all people through the 17th sustainability goals of United Nations, we should target also decarbonization by 2050, and at the same time there is difference between theory and what we have on the land, and that's why there is a difference between culture. For example, I am from Arab world, and between the education, and allow me also to say that our Prophet Muhammad 1,500 years ago said that people, not Muslim people are partner in water, energy and food. And this is in general the short description of the 17 goals of the United Nations. When we think about the monopoly of electricity company around the world, it's the monopoly with the governments. And this monopoly of governments, I think, because I work in renewable energy, just not that good experience, 35 years, but this is a good solution for inhabitants. And the fifth industrial revolution started to the benefit of inhabitants, citizens of the world. And how to get shift from profit to benefit. Why, for example, in my country, in Jordan, and in the Arab world, I was speaker in the 7th Arab Union Electricity. And I find this monopoly very clear because there is no grid connection in a way that we are satisfied in the Arab world. And at the same time, it's the renewable energy, it didn't add anything for the electricity bill for individual. When we bought renewable energy, at least we should have the benefit. And for example, we can divide them to three. The existed are the producer of energy, and we as developer, the existed power generation from renewable energy, all renewable energy sources, and also the customer. And on that, every country have regulatory electricity body for that to regulate that. But it's usually there is twins are lead everything in every country, money and the government, the power they have, and the rest of people. There is a variation from country to a country. For example, I see in Europe it's excellent experience to take care about the inhabitants themselves, the citizens themselves. But in the other countries, country can work for that in a way that we can get the benefit from the private sector, because when you increase the electricity cost for the private sector, this will increase the cost of everything. And we need, for example, last November I was in Netherlands. In Netherlands, for example, photovoltaic, you can buy it yourself and you can fix it yourself. And it's easy. It's like you buy wash machine or any electric instrument. In my country, for example, there is a certain process that you can fix your renewable energy system. And when we think about the energy mix, because one of estimated panelists speak about energy mix, still in the world up to this moment, there is no independent without the basic source of energy, oil and gas. And this is the problem now. We are fighting for military somewhere, and we don't put money for sustainability or to discover or to facilitate our future. This is what I want to speak in general. And I also want to add the renewable energy policy in the Arab country are promising. We are targeting the same as in Europe. And we bought in general about $1 trillion for the investment of renewable energy, despite we are not in need. We bought it now, up to now, we bought it as moda, because we already have this domestic source of energy, but we want to contribute. We need to shift in mindset. This is still R&D, because when I speak about electric vehicles, from where I manufacture electric vehicles, if I haven't domestic source of energy. We should think in a way that we should be hand in hand about our future. Thank you, and this is what I have to be short and brief. Thank you.
Thank you. So now the tough question, right? As I heard, some people spoke of energy balance. Some people talked of catering to the demand of the prosumerism that has already been unleashed. And some people spoke about security of supply. So my question is going to be, you can't do a linear programming based on market-based systems, assuming that you've got infinitesimal resources to be able to manage this linear programming equation. So the question I have for the panel, and you may want to agree or disagree with me and comment, is, what do you think will be the technical strictures you would place such that this doesn't become a huge civil problem? In fact, it could be a civil problem because you technically are going to have the prosumer thinking he can do whatever he or she wants. You've got a transmission operator who will say, you know what, I've got to maintain the wires such that I don't ever be out of power. The distribution company is caught in a sandwich in between saying, I am the energy balancer and I've got to cater to what this people want in the local. And then we've got a market-based system that we are relying on where people themselves have said that maybe we can't afford all the cost implications we are going to do. So I'm going to ask each one of you to say, what would be your view as to how are you going to manage the strategy? Forget the solutions. I think we've already got enough of solutions. What is the strategy 1, 2, 3 between now and let's say 5, 7 years that you will start putting certain what I'll call blocks or posts, guideposts that says that if this occurs, then the next gate will come. If this occurs, then the next gate will come. Such that we have some semblance of a kind of a coordinated approach to where we are going. Because India is a very large country. You make a mistake here and there are a lot of problems, So I'm going to again start with the big man here and you give me your answer.
Yeah, very tough question. See, anyhow, definitely the problem is so big, it cannot be one solution fits all. We have to break into parts. And it has to go like, as I told, first of all, security of the system has to be maintained. So 24/7 that keeps happening. And ultimately, see, the system operator's role is only to making facilities. He is not doing dispatch. Basically, he is only coordinating. So therefore, the fundamental part, important part of the at national level, at a regional level is how well he is able to coordinate the states and the distribution companies. So we have to bring up so the major task of at national level or regional level is to bring all their efforts in coordinated manner. So first of all, a human approach, that is one important point which we need to tackle. Strategy is basically, that how well we are coordinating with each other. Solutions on the market is there and generation resources all are there. But how well we are coordinating. See, suppose we are trying to do without giving importance or understanding with the water distribution company or load serving entity is trying to do, or the state is trying to do. If you can't, at the system level, we can't work in isolation. So therefore, how well we are able to coordinate, and systems and processes have to be developed in that manner. So the regulations also have to be in such a way. And another important strategy is that the regulations at the state level and the national level have to be in sync. So that is another important and a major task that strategically we need to address is that, so the human approach first and the regulator also have to be in sync. So these two are very, very essential for establishing a trouble-free this thing. This is a very, very, in my view, this is a very chord, we should say, is there.
People are taking note of that, so I guess it will be, yeah. Quick answers, because I've got 3 questions.
Oh, this is almost like dhamki dena. No, just on a lighter note. And as very rightly set up by Baba sir as well. So I would, thank you for that tricky question again. So my submission would be, the first one is a seamless integration, and second is having a collaborative approach. And when we say seamless integration, we have all seen different solutions, different energy mix, a balancing which we have been doing since decades. It's just that we have new players in there. We have new kind of intermittency as well as new kind of disturbances that could arise into the system. So the first one will be a seamless integration. Second is, frankly, there has always been this tug of war where we are trying to see that, ye kiske role mein aata hai, who's the best person to tackle this and so on. We are all now very serious with the sustainability. We all know we have to implement it. A very carefully thought process on what could be a good approach. There is going to be an overlap between the TSO, between the DSOs, and the kind of conventional functions that we have been playing in the utility, in the organization. The kind of roles that are expected are much more. So you may just not operate a system anymore. You will also be an auditor. You will also be a data analyst. You also have to have that future predictions as well as do the best and optimized thing possible with that particular network which we are handling. And also one very important part is that there are many global countries who have been implementing these strategies. We can take the best lessons learned from them, customize it specifically to the Indian inherent characteristics, because as the chair mentioned, we have a large demography. We are blessed with so much renewables and so many solutions. So by all the relevant stakeholders, a careful, phased, implemented and collaborative approach is what I feel will give us, the best output in here. Thank you.
He already gave me the edge quick. I'll just keep it simple. I would say that there should be a step-by-step approach. It's not going to happen as a big collaborative and big boiling the ocean type of stuff. So, as I already mentioned at my opening speech, which is part of the answer to this particular question too, that at the transmission level, we need to take a step up. And I kind of put in quote-unquote flexibility as a service. So it's an incremental model that we need to introduce there, rather than solving the big problem. The second thing that I did mention, that there should be a notion of DER desk in a distribution control room, which basically will provide the vehicle of a real-time integration, if I may say, which how we will do, it'll be a journey. And so my last piece of the answer is, let's do a real-time integration simulation, but it's a real time, so that you really actually look at the model that you want to implement and hence take the step-by-step approach to mature the model before you roll out.
This side of the house actually had a slightly different consensus, and I'm going to pose a second question to them. Do you think moving certain assets up to the transmission level, because it's a big battery, the transmission level, you mentioned about the morning issues and things like that, and you talked of energy storage. So the question I have is, do you think by moving certain assets to the transmission level forcibly is a better strategy to manage a lot of DERs as opposed to leaving it at the distribution level? So I'll start with you and then you can.
Thank you for your question. I don't think there's a one answer fits all here. So we see that we are transiting from a fuel base, where the fuel is the most cost electric society, to a situation where capital expenditure will be the highest cost. There will be no fuel anymore. In the 2123, we will be in 100 years with CapEx and almost no OpEx. So if you understand this, and probably the system will change in such a way that the one-in-a-lifetime problem today will become one in a week problem in 100 years, or one in a day problem in 100 years. So you need to create a framework. I don't think you can dictate today where which technology should be. There are so many technologies, there are so many solutions. You need to facilitate and create a framework. And this for me has two things. First of all, you need to attract the investors. So the regulator or any entity, maybe the TSOs, depending which setup nationally, should offer contracts, products where people have the guarantee that they can bid into this for the lifetime or for the economic lifetime of their product. So they can invest, there's investment security. We have this in Europe now, discussion, long-term power purchase agreements, long-term capacity payments, long-term frequency containment reserve payments, so that the investment is not risky or the risk is reduced. The second, which I think needs to be done, is to have the framework about who may do what, because otherwise you end up in a bit chaotic situation. So you need to structure it from the top down, then let the market fill it in with longer term revenues. So the battery would be either on transmission, which I mentioned as an experience to avoid the N-1, but it could be on distribution, and the flexibility could be also a market-based product on distribution level in order to get it there. So create a framework, get the investor security for the investment, and the rest will come.
It's getting more tougher as...
I'll change the question from the last three.
The answer lies, yeah. Since it's a common national problem, or it's going to be a common global problem, it's a common global problem going forward. Answer lies in sharing. And sharing of responsibility should not be getting it confused with the sharing of purviews of the distribution or the transmission companies or the generation companies. Purviews are basically the jobs which we do. Generator has to generate power through various resources. Transmitter has to transmit the entire power, evacuate it and bring it to the distribution side. And distribution has to ultimately supply the entire power, also taking care of the losses so that the power which is generated should not be wasted at the end. When it comes to the flexibility and making it working throughout, the sharing of the practices of various distribution companies, I would say, which right now, like for example, we work collaboratively with consumers on various fronts. There's a huge engagement in terms of not only consumers taking care of their own meter readings. I'm just telling a different aspect, but it's when it comes to the demand side and the flexibility, ultimately the fourth block is very important, and with the onset of prosumers into place, technologies are widely available. Framework, as told by Patrick, has to be there in place. But yes, there should be also a kind of a governing framework which ensures that that happens, because just creating a framework may not help, because we are the largest democracy of the world, if I say in Indian parlance, and we have over 29 states and state governments and UTs and then the central government. So frameworks are all there in place, its constitution is there in place, the way in which electricity, which is a concurrent topic to the state and the nation, is all there in place. We have all the wizards available, but the governing mechanism has to be strengthened further so that the things which have to happen at the right time, happen at the right time without delay, whether in terms of the clearance of the policies or whether in terms of the implementation of some new age things, or maybe in terms of the overall change in the transformation. It has to happen at the right time, because any delay in implementation creates all the havoc. This is my submission.
Your comment is the question for the other three. The general philosophy has been that G, T, and D, segregation of carriage and content, has been the mantra for the last 25 years around the world. It satisfied to the extent the statement that was set up was that we should make it more transparent. So the question for the three of you is, try to go to a regulator to satisfy the capture of benefits when you have all the three jurisdictionally segregated, with the wires and content segregated, is a tough act. tough act. You will not be able to go through the regulator that easily. A vertically integrated utility has a better chance. So some of the utilities out in the West have actually reintegrated themselves to be able to overcome this. So what, in your opinion, is going to be whether India will continue to go to see this level of transparency opening which we went through, or do you see a different model for India to make all this happen?
Sir, requires a lot thoughtfulness. Anyway, I try to address. Mainly, sir, we have a live example. Kerala State Electricity Board doing very fine. It is not unbundled. So, integrated approach is also running in the country. And diversified and the reform is also working fine. Now, knowingly, we have a designated responsibility and a role of each and every entity. So when we think of flexibility and the storage solution, probably the flexibility should be with the generator who is the owner of it. It may be a developer in terms of renewable. It may be a plant owner, Genco in case of generator. And to achieve that necessary CapEx, OpEx support. Today what happens, suppose I am a generator, I want to be flexible. I approach to the regulatory commission. He will say your PLF is less than 35%. If you invest more crores of rupees, your PLF will further go down, so it's not viable. So if any technical requirement is there, it is to be addressed with a viability gap fund. Apart from that, let us come to the storage or a new solution. Who will own it? Well, transmission can own it, but we have a live example of West Bengal Distribution Company, the Purulia pump mode storage power plant operated by West Bengal Discom. No problem at all. It is running very fine because when it is in a pump mode, it is not any load or a demand or a industry who is using the power. It is a power used by the Discom itself. And when it is in a generation mode, it is not a payback to any Genco for that power. So operative live working models are available in the, no doubt it may vary from other state to state also, but the solution is there. Administratively, we have to be very serious about pros and cons of each and every alternative. But important is we try together, decide and implement. Probably the delay is more in this area, sir.
I think my answer is a bit generalistic to that extent. See, when you specialize, right, you get the best, right? Because, for example, you say content and carriage. I think what best can the consumer look at when he can go for the best prices, right? Competition is there, there is a good aspect. Now, the biggest problem with specialization is that as you specialize, you become expert and somehow you get detached from the overall system, right? Again, the example is that, I'll give you a live example which may happen like a city like Mumbai, where there's a huge competition, content and carriage type of structure is there. So the competition and the aspect behind the Discom is that how he optimizes the power purchase cost. But what if the system security demands running embedded generation, which is at the costliest level? Who is the payer for that? Is it the Discom or is it to be socialized? Now, this is a condition which is where the system operator or grid operator really finds big problem. So the solution lies in, one, as you said, a very good coordinated effort in terms of what needs to be there. Say, for example, a system operator should be disconnected from the commercials, honestly speaking, because when anything goes wrong, he doesn't look into what is the cost, but he is looking into saving the system. So what is that structure in place that whenever the issue comes, the system operator can intervene and that particular, whatever may be the available scenario which has been put in place, how it is socialized. Because, see, going back, we would require a more like a hybrid structure. Again, my personal feeling is that the consumer benefit is the maximum when you do a content carriage, because it does bring in a lot of benefit to the consumers, the basic concept of having a good reliable supply at a very, very optimal cost. But the challenge at the system operator level, the regulator, is how do we put the coordinations in place? How do we put systems in place that when there is a requirement or when there is a crisis in the system operator just operates. That's it. It doesn't come to a commercial going on. So I think this is very, very important part to it, because going back may not be the right thing, but maybe a hybrid approach would be the right approach to it.
I'm going to spare you the answer because it's all Indian politics here. So
Yes, yes. Yes.
I'm going to reserve 5 minutes for the chair. We
Yeah.
began 10 minutes late. No, that's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
10 minutes late. So if there are 2 or 3 questions from the audience, let's take that, and then I will ask the chair to provide his remarks and close it. Yes, Admiral. We'll need to provide a mic here. And you can direct your question if you will. I mean, that is fine. It's allowed.
No, I think I don't have a question. I have more of a comment. I am Vice Admiral A.K. Saxena, retired from the Indian Navy after 39 years. And in these 39 years, I maintained, operated, and designed power systems for warships. It's a different perspective altogether. There, the flexibility was achieved by having quantity-related redundancy and spatial redundancy. And I realize after coming here that that is a very luxurious method of achieving flexibility, which is not feasible in a real world as we live here. So that brings me, or rather I would like to latch on to the point made by the chair, that the granularity of the demand prediction will have to be reduced from existing 15 minutes to 5 minutes or maybe 1 minute. And that is very, very relevant for the DISCOMs at this moment. And probably this would require a change in the mindset shift. There will be a mindset shift required from this traditional near manual to gut feeling methods presently being adopted by large number of state DISCOMs. I will not talk about the private DISCOMs. Some of them are sitting here. And therefore, it will have to be changed from this existing system to a more scientific, accurate, and self-learning systems, which are very much available. Mr. Mehta talked about it. Mr. Jayant Kumar mentioned about the concept of having a DER desk. These are things which are going to make a change in the way we predict power, and we achieve the granularity that is required to be achieved as mentioned by the chair. And I would only like to say that errors at each level are going to only cumulatively add to the inflexibility of the existing system. So these were my comments. Maybe I am a layman in this world of the smart grids, but that I thought I'll put up my perspective.
I am from Siemens, but my question is from the common user. So we are talking about power system flexibility, and my question is, when we can see power generation and transmission from each and every home, like can we have a PV system or solar system at each and every home? Maybe not each and every, maybe 50% of the houses we have in India, and then we can have a bi-directional energy transmission from the grid to home and home to grid, and then we can have a more generation and transmission, and we can fulfill this to each and every rural belt as well. So can we have, second question to this is, can we have some financial support to each and every houses for these solar systems which can help in generation of power? So are we also planning this for a future generation and transmission, which will help us in power system flexibility as well as a generation from each and every home? So we have these examples from, I think, Denmark or Norway, where number of houses are having a solar systems which have a bidirectional transmissions. They consume the power and the leftover is transmitted back to the grid, and that is transmitted to wherever it is needed. So I think India also need this. And
so who wants to take it? Essentially, is talking of financial support for the installation behind the meter as a consumer support. And the second is the net metering, which perhaps all of us have experienced.
Yes.
So far as at consumer place, either he can set up any plant. It may be set up in three mode. He can set up, he can consume the electricity directly from the licensee, and whatever the generation he's made out, he directly inject into the grid. It is a gross metering method is available for that. Second thing is, whatever generation is taken place, simultaneously same time he can consume also, and whatever the surplus energy that can be injected into the grid, for that net metering is also available. Now new concept of the behind the meter is also adopted at some places in the country also. So these are the options available to the consumers to in which mode he desire to go for it. Similarly, in agriculture sector also, the government of India has and some state has also put up the schemes like Kusum in Gujarat Sky scheme, which provide that consumer, means agriculture farmer can set up their solar systems at their feeder pump set levels, and whatever their requirement they can consume, and surplus energy, if any, it can be injected into the grid. And for that, the surplus energy which is injected into the grid, the rate has been decided by the commissions, and that's why he can also benefit it on that part.
Just one last one. Very short, just for me, PV will become an energy source which will be abundantly available everywhere, not only in homes. You will have printed on your jackets, and you will charge your smartphones in your pocket with induction. This will happen. In the next 10 years, you will have it everywhere. So the question is not only if you should then help the consumer to have it at home, then own consumption and feed it into the system. Then you need to ask the cost question also. Because if you take electricity from the grid, only 5 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours a day, and the rest you own yourself electricity, how do you pay for the grid? How do you pay for the transmission? Someone needs to pay for it. And if you have only the electricity-only component per kilowatt hour you consume for the grid, and you have your own battery at home, you don't support the grid, but you need it as insurance. So you need to also think of this, how do you pay for this insurance of the grid supply when your photovoltaic system is not working? So it's not only paying, but maybe the consumer needs to contribute to this.
yes.
So with that, I'm going to ask the chair to please conclude with your remarks, sir.
Thank you all speakers who have spoken on different aspects with consideration of the today's topic, particularly power system, flexibility and strategy and solutions. As stated, that flexibility is required with consideration of physical aspects, where the frequency and correlated physical parameters like current, voltage, reactive powers, all are important factors. And that is a very important factors which require to be considered with consideration of the different aspect, that is digital technology or other aspects. I found that one of the important parameters which require as a part of the regulator from which I am coming from, that institutions, that in dynamic system at present, because there are new solutions like digital solar, smart meters, sensors, and all other different things comes. So how to pass on the cost, because the capex is one of the important factors, and how to verify what is the actual cost. And particularly digital instrument systems comes, their useful life and use life are also varying from time to time because the technical innovation also. So as a regulator, it also required for regulator also that they have to adequately come to knowledge about what is the cost. If any system is allowed to carry out by the licensee, how much cost will be passed and what is the actual cost. Similarly, the data which come in different forms from the different agencies like generator, transmission and consumer place. So that data are they useful to decide what is the strategy and what is the transmission planning, what is the distribution planning. That is very important factors which require to be new aspects considered by the regulators as well as licensee and all stakeholders. Now coming to the consumer points, because at present the licensing act is enacted by providing particularly competitions and cheaper power to the consumers. So as a cheaper power to the consumer is one of the focus aspects. Transmission and wire business of licensee are monopoly business because everybody have to assess it. And to assess it, when you decided that transmission planning or distribution network planning is now changed. So in that aspect, what is the load flow, what is the power flow, and in what is requirement is also one of the aspects which require to be considered by the regulators. Similarly, asset useful lives and other things also the challenging aspects with consideration of power system flexibility. Ancillary services also emerging an area and who will provide it and at which cost. Because and whenever it is required for limited periods, in that situation, what is the cost of that services is also one of the challenging part. So market is changing in different way. Smart markets, smart grids, smart networks, all these things comes. But with learning power process, we come to know that how to come out on that part. Now power flexibility is one of the important factor when RE integration comes. Inertia, because the renewable energy which comes in that frequency, if the frequency is very less or varying differently, then how to provide inertia to the systems is one of the also challenging factors which require to be considered for the future also. And that will come from the learning of the licensees as well as consumers, as well as generators and all stakeholders like us, and it will be provide better solution for the future also. Thank you.
Excuse me. Sorry, you forget maybe my question.
You want a question?
Yes, you do.
I didn't want the Indian context to be burdening.
No. Just you mentioned something we are synchronized together about it, about energy transparency. And I want to add, because I was speak about this in a big and huge conference. Energy transparency is very important because you can have many facts before you decide your strategy. And I want to emphasize this important. If you ask any government in the world or the decision maker of the strategy, what is the right demand and what you are expecting for the future? It's like you ask a woman, a lady, what's your age? It's very difficult to answer. And that's why we need high transparency of data. One in Jordan come to me, and I will finish with this small story. They have a big mall, and they want to put a photovoltaic system. And I told him, before you put photovoltaic system, renewable energy system, you should have energy management, energy saving, and energy auditing. And some of my staff go there, and they find a yogurt shop, and this yogurt shop is the rental fees per month about $300. And the electricity in that shop, it's more than 400. And that's why when you have kind of transparency, this is a small example, it will be good for the future and to decide the real demand and what is the right strategy from that. Thank you.
Applause. Mr. Mohan. Mr. Baba. Now I request Ravi sir to please hand over the token of appreciation to our chair, Mr. Pandey. Huge round of applause.